When Markiplier first announced he was directing a film adaptation of Iron Lung, it was definitely a surprise. Not only because it was a new indie game, but that the pink-mustache twirling king of FNAF would be helming the project as its main star. And while he's taken a crack or two at short movies and series in the past, there was a skepticism if he could capture the same claustrophobia and desperation the game was known for. And what we wound up getting exceeded all expectations, as it studied descent into dread and insanity in the face of greater beings, showcased the desperation and indifference of humanity. Now we all have some idea on what cosmic horror is, as its foundations root itself in the fear of the unknown, a horror we were never meant to comprehend that break our notion of reality and normality. Where Lovecraft stories have garnered a reputation of exploiting these fears, and while I know he wouldn't like me for, obvious reasons, and you should never ask him about cats, he did revolutionize what it means to be confronted with the incomprehensible, where Iron Lung, created by David Szymanski, adopts that philosophy to a minor extent, as seen through its universe of ruin, isolation, and the creatures from the deep, being vague for the purposes of boosting its horror rather than telling the audience what to fear. And the movie expands upon these concepts to create a true cosmic horror, as its protagonist, Simon, is trapped and alone, desperate to survive as he slowly uncovers the truth to his situation and the company exploiting him, where its initial horror stems from an event known as the Quiet Rapture, where a majority of humanity and the stars disappeared in an instant, leaving its last remnants to fend for itself. Where the film never goes deeper than that, and that's intentional, as it would rather show a helpless society on the brink of self-imploding, where they send prisoners for their likely deaths to explore a sea of blood in the hopes of finding something to keep society going. Which is how we're introduced to Simon, believing that as long as he does what the company wants, he will gain his freedom. As he's welded into a sub and forced to explore the ocean's depths, armed with nothing but an X-ray camera and a proximity radar to make out his environment, quickly succumbing to paranoia and the inability to trust the people around him as they leave him in the dark, where even when trying to warn them that something is down there with them, he gets brushed off, forced to do their bidding, where in trying to get a sample for them, he gets stranded at the bottom of the sea, forced to survive against the ancient horrors of the deep. It's a story that reminds me of Lovecraft's The Temple, one of his many short stories, dealing with a German U-boat during World War I whose crew is pulled into the sea's depths after finding a small statue, where the sub descends into insanity and paranoia as its protagonist, Carl, forces himself into isolation as he executes his crew with the belief that they're insane without realizing his own mental state, ultimately leaving him and his companion as the last ones left, stranded with the ocean running low on oxygen, as some greater force calls to them, where ultimately his friend pulls an ocean gate as Carl finds himself alone within ancient ruins at the bottom of the sea, as he finally gives in to his visions and hallucinations, leaving his writings to any weary travelers who may follow in their steps. Where, similar to Carl, Simon has a shaky history that is easily preyed upon, as Simon's guilt and trauma is used against him as the movie's true entity, the light, uses audio and visual hallucinations to weaken his mind, slowly tempting him with safety, companionship, and renewal as it leads him to the ocean floor, where the only way Simon can visualize it is a tree of light akin to Yggdrasil or a giant eye that oversees the entire ocean of blood he's trapped in, where by sheer human will, he is able to fight against its attempts to manipulate him, becoming an enemy to the sea around him, as La'il serves as a physical threat that tries to attack Simon as he battles the ocean both mentally and physically, with his desire to live keeping him going, where the only thing Simon can do is hit the thing with enough radiation to bomb Hiroshima to keep La'il at bay. But in the face of essentially a cosmic god, it's only a slight inconvenience, as the ocean itself is alive, its contents originating from human blood that has infected both Simon and the ship, allowing the light to latch onto his physical body and communicate with him while also keeping him alive as he survives for days low on oxygen. If the light really deemed him a threat, then it would have killed him from the start, but it's clearly a being who likes the idea of worship and followers. For example, a research sub known as SM-8 had run into the light and infected its crew, primarily through the ingestion of blood, succumbing to the light and becoming its followers, where whatever else followed led to the ship being torn apart, most likely from La'il, showing Simon what his potential fate might be, as he visually sees what he might become if the light takes over him, with La'il being an amalgamation of those it's consumed in these waters as it serves its cosmic master, stalking Simon and serving as a more comprehensible force as its horror lies within its design, size, and lack of understanding on what it is, where initially we don't see both the light or La'il until almost halfway into the movie, as the movie builds off the isolation of being stuck at sea and introducing the mechanics while hinting that something else is down there with him. A good chunk of it is just building the horror and suspense so that we can feel as trapped and isolated as Simon does, so we can relate to his struggle of wanting to survive. And when Simon presents himself to be a threat by trying to preserve the SM-8's black box that would expose the light's existence, the light does everything in its power to dissuade Simon and bind him through the blood leaking into his hull. Because if that data is released, the rest of humanity will know about the true malicious intent of the light. It's not a scenario with a de facto win, because even if the data is out there, there's only so much humanity can do. No matter what, Simon is left to the mercy of the light within a situation he can't even begin to comprehend, as he's forced to stick to his own limitations, where besides running into his own psychological issues that led him to being incarcerated, he has to deal with electrical issues, shortage of supplies, a lack of oxygen, and a steadily flooding sub. All these things add to the tension and horror, as anything that could go wrong does go wrong, where as soon as Simon is forced down there, he was already a dead man, only alive due to the light taking interest in his trauma, considering that El Eel initially backs off after its first attack, only coming back to kill Ava, the commander who sent Simon down there, before going after Simon himself. But all of these things make Simon's actions far more impactful throughout the film, as his initial goal of survival is for himself. He wants his freedom, to clear his name. He doesn't care about the rest of the world, as long as he's set free. But that goal steadily shifts as he learns to live for more than just himself, not letting his own personal fears hold him back, where he makes an active choice to go back for the SM-8's black box so that humanity might have a chance. Even with his final breath, he ensures that both the data from his own ship but the SM-8 are preserved, as he learns to understand that this is more than just him, his safety and well-being. It's a hope for humanity's survival. If he's gonna die, he's gonna do it fighting, where even as the light rips him apart as he joins the ocean's depths, his heavy contact with the blood and his will to keep going allow him to kill Lael. And his sacrifice isn't in vain, as the black box makes it to the ocean's surface, where even in the face of a god, humanity was able to prevail. It's a story that's not only hopeful, but tragic. The horrors of this world are still there, and for all we know, they always will be. But mankind has a chance to learn, to change, and to see the future. If you made it this far, please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the kind of content I'm making. This is Balthazar, signing off.